Now, this is called weighing words in an election year. I couldn't believe it. My niece, Mrs. 21st Century, had just asked me a question about history. My real-time niece, Mrs. Here and Now, mom, wife, country clubber wannabe, had just asked me about presidential skullduggery. Who did I think was the worst president in my lifetime? Not the best, the worst. From Ike to Barack, spin back the clock. More than likely, my niece was expecting me to say Nixon, the checkers player, who looked into a television camera and lied to more Americans at once than any president before him, and probably the next two after him. Nixon did not consider himself a crook, and he said he did not lie. He misspoke. Almost as deserving of my vote for the worst commander-in-chief in the last 60 years would be George W., the decider, for the way he flung words like shoes after the tragedy of 9/11, particularly the Christian equivalent of jihad, crusade. George let the Arab world know he was reading The Stranger, labeled 3 rogue countries the axis of evil, and encouraged our enemies to bring it on. Whoever was his ventriloquist should have had his tongue cut out. Definitely, my niece would be surprised if I replied Reagan for putting a smile on the face of right-wing ideology. Before Reagan, far-righters were considered fringe, the most selfish control freaks since nobles feasted above the salt, while loyal subjects waited outside for bread bowls into which a little grease had trickled. What might she say if I mentioned that soon after leaving office, Reagan gave a couple of speeches in Japan for $1 million each? Not a lot compared to what modern CEOs skim off the top, but lots more than what union men and women earned all their lives. There are a few things as boring as listening to old people rant and rave about the past. So I elected to say nothing that might leave my niece aghast. That's a hard question to answer, I said instead, while wondering if her father would be voting more against Barack than for Mitt. How do you think your father would answer it?